Hi, welcome to A Course in Miracles workbook class, brought to you from the Little Garden in Sedona, Arizona, USA. If you would like to study the course with others, but do not have a home group, you might want to watch our study group's home-style meetings on YouTube. For details of this and more, go to our website, www.thelittlegarden.org. Thank you and enjoy today's class. Today is the last review of the first set of reviews, lesson 60. And I'm disappointed because I love these review lessons and it's, the last of 10 days. So, but they are beautiful. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Lesson 60 in the Course in Miracles workbook. It's on page 100. So the ideas to review are so wonderful. And let's just, after a while, let's dig into one or two of them. God is the love in which I forgive. God is the strength in which I trust. There is nothing to fear. Wow. God's voice speaks to me all through the day. Isn't that beautiful? I am sustained by the love of God. So the first thing that really attracts me in here is God does not forgive because he's never condemned. For some reason, I went through very fast, quickly through the book of Genesis and part of Exodus today.
Just for self-flagellation.
No, I was actually looking for something which I didn't find. But what I did see was how God in the Old Testament was such a meanie. It was like one of the things was people should be terrified of God because then they won't sin. And you look at how different that is from A Course in Miracles. God does not forgive because he never has condemned. There is no sin. There's only mistakes. And God's love flows to us constantly.
So go back to what you just said about the idea is that if we have this fear of God, then we'll be able to control ourselves or we'll be able to avoid this wrong way of living. Yeah. And that is something that's sort of deep in our thinking, is that I kind of got to be afraid of myself or ashamed of myself, or I'll just be completely out of control.
Yeah.
Kind of thinking that somehow, this is the craziness of the ego, which just upside down thinking is fear will keep me safe.
Right.
That just seems
that's like normal thinking.
Seemingly normal thinking.
Be afraid of traffic, be afraid of the sun, be afraid of your neighbor.
Whereas love protects me.
Right.
It's love that protects me, right. Not fear, not guilt.
Yeah. And I am sustained by the love of God. At one point, I looked up the word sustain. It says to support or to give relief. That's sustaining. So God takes care of us. I really love what I learned in Unity was that the Bible is a record of humanity's journey to understand God. So at first, this is just, I'm looking at this from A Course in Miracles standpoint. When we thought that God was vengeful, angry, murderous, demanded blood sacrifice, even of
the good guys,
even of the good guys, even if his only son, that's New Testament story. It's like, okay, it comes forward more and more until we finally begin to hear what it says in the New Testament. God is love. And then I think A Course in Miracles is the is the blossoming of that. And, you know, we've got more to go because we haven't fully embodied this,
Right.
but we're working on it.
So but traditionally and biblically, what are the two from New Testament, what are the two great commandments? To love God
and to love your neighbor.
And to love your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
To love God with all of your mind, all of your spirit, all of your being, and to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yep, that's it.
That's absolutely the course.
That is the course.
And that has been the truth that's really run through it.
Yeah.
As opposed to what we, thought it was saying. Like fear is going to keep me safe.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to be afraid of you, or how will I be protected?
Right. Right.
I have to be afeared of those political people, or how would I be? Now, it doesn't, the course is always practical. So it's not going to say, let yourself be beat up by somebody.
Not at all.
Because it's an illusion.
No.
But it's this idea of valuing fear, of valuing.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's really hard, or not hard, but it's something that is the real learning crux, is to realize my experience is a function of what I want.
Yes.
And not denying that. And that was why the Jesus story was so important, because he's saying, I was tortured, I was murdered, but I didn't experience that because I didn't want that to be the truth of who I am.
Yeah. He knew he was not a body, he was spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's teaching us there is nothing to fear. What I really got when I was reading the Genesis and Exodus is that the mindset was very physical.
Uh-huh.
The physical world is what's real. That's what's real. Love didn't enter into it as far as I could see. It was like, oh my goodness, such a turnaround. So I think we have to be careful when we bring things forward from the past. Check it out. If you're a student of the course, check it out. Is that really the point of evolution we're at now? We're at the point where God is love. God is the love in which I forgive. I'm supposed to forgive, not judge, condemn, and murder. God does not forgive because he has never condemned.
We talked about this. Well, I did the class this morning with 3 women from Tucson, and they've been in the 12-step program for a long, long time, and they've over 40 years, and they sponsor a lot of people. And what we talked about a little bit was like the first 2 steps is the first step is admitted we were, messed up. Everything was wrong. It became powerless and all of that. And then came to believe in a power greater than ourselves. But that first step of my life is unmanageable and everything's not working and all of that, that's an important thing to get. But to recognize behind that is I've been given all power.
Yeah.
As I really am. I've been given all power to meet any situation with love instead of fear.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's the fear that's making me powerless. Right. And I've got to see that. I've got to see that fear doesn't have a value.
Fear is making us powerless. That is a really good thing to remember.
Yeah.
You can feel it. It's like when you're in fear. When I'm in fear, my knees are shaking. Right? What they say, fight or flight, or freeze. I freeze.
Yeah.
That's my deal. Yeah. But all of those things are fear. Exactly. And they're powerless.
Yeah.
They're powerlessness.
Yeah.
So.
And I would say that that's a big part of the mind training, is to recognize, what are you valuing? What do you want?
Right.
What is it that you see is going on? And are you seeing it as a function of what I wanted? Am I valuing fear? Am I valuing shame? And just the ability to see that.
Right.
And then say, I don't want that. And then what is there, the love, will serve us.
Right.
Our part is just to let go of that.
You know, we've been going through these review lessons, and so much of it has to do with the power of our minds, because what the Course is telling us is that everything we experience is a product of our thought.
Mhm.
And there's only two thought systems: ego, based on fear, and Holy Spirit's based on love.
Yeah.
That's the only two things. So if we're seeing, experiencing chaos, disease, disaster, and death, it's because we value it. And ego fools us so bad by telling us it's all about them out there.
Right.
So we don't look at our own thoughts, which are the source of our experience and our physical experience.
You know, he said that in the original one of these first 50, God is the strength in which I trust. And what he said in there, the recognition of our own frailty, meaning our identification with the ego and the body,
Mm-hmm.
the recognition of how that's not working, our own frailty, is a necessary step in the correction of our errors, but it's hardly sufficient one in giving us the confidence we need.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't just stop with it's messed up, I'm valuing fear, we got to let the next step be given to us.
Yeah.
Otherwise we're just stuck, I'm stuck in my flaws, I'm stuck in my errors, all of that. We really have to say at any given moment,
Right.
I can change my experience.
I can change my experience by changing my thoughts.
And by identifying with the strength of God.
Yes.
Instead of the strength of the ego and fear and shame and all that.
Yep. Yep. So I loved a lesson from over the weekend. There is nothing my holiness cannot do. Wow. You know, when you're doubting your power, read that lesson. You could go back to the original, which is lesson 38. There is nothing my holiness cannot do. Looking at the problems in the world, looking at the problems in my own life, in my loved one's life, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. What stops us from doing that? Oh, I'm not holy. Self-concept, a false self-concept.
It's a preoccupation with the past, the way we've acted, the things that we've done, or the things that we seem to have been done to us. We're just stuck in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the holy instant is so important. He said, like, that can be the state that you live in constantly. I mean, that's what he's heading for. There's no reason why you can't be in the present all the time, because that's really what time is the present.
That's all it is, really.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can be in that state of, feeling the love. What does the Course say? You have to learn that you're lovable and loving. And we learn those in those same situations where we've taught ourselves we're not loving.
Yeah.
And that we're not lovable.
And so at every moment, every holy instant, we have a choice. And we can go to the past and say, that's who I am. That's what I'm about. That's just me, by referencing the past.
Yeah.
Or we can go to our imagination about the future. And that's just what it's going to be. It's just another crapshoot. Yeah.
It's just natural. That's the way the natural world is.
Yeah. But in the present moment, we can say, God's voice speaks to me all through the day. I'm sustained by the love of God. God is giving me his very life right here to express. Right now, it doesn't matter what I did in the past. It does not matter. That is gone. It's over. It has no effect unless I bring it into the present and claim it.
Yeah.
So if we go to the holy instant, these things become very much more alive for us.
Yeah. I was talking to my friend in Alaska. He's a Course student. He's just a great guy and very loving person. And I was sharing with him these few days when I was just feeling just awful and powerless and helplessness. And I'd keep trying to practice the course, and it was like, okay, now I got to do this kind of practice, or let me read this in the course. And when you get to that point, so he was sharing, when you get to that point, because it is true, if you learn how to practice, you'll get this.
Yeah.
But there's a certain point where you come to where you just have to be able to say, I don't want this.
Yeah.
And then realize that the miracle that you can receive is just a function of not something you figured out. It's just a function of you trusting God and trusting love.
Right.
And that's the first attribute of the teacher of God, is trust.
And that's the second review for today. God is the strength in which I trust.
That's right.
Not my own abilities, not what I've learned, not even what I've learned in the course.
Yeah.
God is
it.
the strength in which I trust. God lives in me all the time. I can turn to that instead of my false self-concept that the ego makes up.
Yep. You know, in the non-dualism tradition that I was raised in, before I got to the course, it was like this idea that the purpose of all spiritual disciplines in the end, and it's not that you shouldn't do them, but the purpose of all spiritual disciplines is to bring you to this point when you realize my human sense of self is not enough.
It's not even real.
It's not real, therefore not enough. But that is the place that I have to come to, is as I see myself, as I see the world from this standpoint of fear and valuing that, that's not enough.
Right.
And then and only then we can let the Holy Spirit in.
Right.
Because those two thought systems, you can't have fear and love together. You can't have innocence and guilt together, you know. And but we have to get to this point where we go, okay, as I see myself, I seem powerless, I seem weak, but I've just identified with the wrong ego with the wrong sense of self.
Right. The ego is all about we are victims.
Yeah.
So if we're thinking that, oh, it's just a terrible thing that the world is in this shape or whatever, and I'm a victim and my kids are victims, my grandkids are victims, all of that, I'm forgetting that I'm sustained by the love of God, and so are they. I'm forgetting that God is the strength in which I trust. The only way we can bring miracles through into this world is by stopping our valuing of the fearful thoughts and the painful thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's like when we identify with them, when we think, well, that's just who I am. That's just me. You know, these things just happen to me because I'm accident prone or something like that. It's like that is a self-concept that produces the result that the self-concept was designed to produce. Hidden in the back, it appears that the world is doing it to us, but we have power, and it's the power of God in us.
Yeah. Do you remember our reading last Sunday was this idea of abstraction and concrete?
Yeah.
And it was saying that the ego's idea of what's concrete, what it was saying is that this desiring and wanting of fear, of guilt and shame, thinking those things have value, thinking they're going to protect you. You know, I must feel shamed, or how would I change? I must be scared, or how would I change? Is that's not real. It's not true. It applies to nothing. But that remains, when we want it, is just sort of an abstraction. It's just sort of this mood that's going out. But what happens is eventually it gets to something very concrete, like you're my problem, right?
Yeah.
Because to very specific situations, it's the political situation, right? But it's when it becomes concrete that we can make a change.
That you can see it well enough to change.
You can see it. You see this. This is what I'm telling myself.
Yeah, right.
It's going on. This kind of going on in the back, and it's not the only thing going on. Love's going on too. But
love is always going on. Yeah.
But when we really get into that fear and that shame, and it takes a concrete that can be real adversity, but it's our greatest opportunity.
Yeah.
Because then I can make a choice.
Yeah.
I can say very specifically, it's this thing that seems to be the reason for my upset.
But it's not the real reason. My thoughts are the real reason.
That's right.
And I can change my thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple of days ago in this fantastic review, it's the review of number 17. I'm going to read just a little bit from that. Let me look on the world I see as the representation of my own state of mind. I know that my state of mind can change, and so I also know the world I see can change as well. That goes for every situation. And we tell ourselves things, I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a long ways off. That's hard.
Yeah.
I'll get to that if I practice enough. And what we're learning is that this is a very sheer veil.
Yeah.
And we're painting something on it and believing in what we have painted on it. And we can just brush it aside and feel the love of God, see the presence of God in other people and in ourselves. And I'm back to today's lesson. God's voice speaks to me all through the day.
Go ahead.
Our friend Leanne sent a link today to a bunch of God cards, she calls them.
Uh-huh.
I think that's what she calls them. They're like little statements, one sentence statements. And one of them said something like, so it's like from God, I'm training you to listen to me all day long. That's just a restatement of this.
Yeah.
God's voice speaks to us all through the day and we can listen.
See, that's really, that when you think about how loving that is, there is not a moment in which God's voice ceases to call on my forgiveness to save me.
Right.
See, and that becomes forgiveness, acceptance, the atonement. That's your one function.
That's the one thing we need to do to clear up our world.
Right. And it doesn't mean we're not fulfilling these functions as partners or parents or certain kind of, we're fulfilling all those other functions.
Right.
But this is the primary function.
Yeah.
From this function where I feel the peace again, where I feel safe again, then we can be clear about the guidance we're getting.
Yeah.
We can be open up to really clear guidance. And then we're not like the ego's hidden goals are always there. Mm-hmm. And because they're hidden,
right,
we don't see that it's a choice.
Right. So the ego's hidden goals are things like you should be afraid, you should be angry, your anger is justified.
Yeah.
Those are the ego's hidden goals.
Yeah.
So if the ego is telling us anger is justified, you should be angry. Anger actually makes you feel more alive, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's protecting you.
Your anger is protecting you. So that's hidden. So then things happen out there so that we can be angry at them.
Right.
So it's like it all comes from our decision of what we want. What do we want? We want to be peaceful, happy, loving, joyful, content, abundant. If those are the things that we want, then these are the things that will help us to clear our minds from those ego goals.
Yeah.
And allow God's goal, which is those things for us, God's love to flow to us and through us.
Right. See, this is why the Course is so emphasizes the idea of private thoughts not being real thoughts.
Uh-huh. You want to talk a little bit about that?
What it's saying is that from the standpoint of specialness, right? Like we want to form these special relations, and all relationships are special. I mean, in the sense that they're all very specific.
Okay.
Right? So it's saying that from the ego standpoint, the ego is saying if you're with another body, that's companionship.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm with another body, but my mind is private.
Right.
And so that becomes the purpose is, oh, now I have companionship. I have these bodies. I need that kind of body with me. Now I'm going to feel
But
compassion.
I'm not going to share anything that's
No, but
going
my
on
mind
in
is
my
private.
mind. Yeah.
Right.
No.
No. That's, I got a private mind. And that's the ego's goal, is to try and keep what's not real, which is
Right.
private,
Yeah.
right?
My self-concept.
My self-concept, to try and actualize that.
Yeah.
And that's where the conflict comes up, because that's not true,
Yeah.
you know, and it's going to fail kind
Yeah.
of thing. So that idea of we're joining our beings,
Our being.
we're
Yeah.
joining our minds,
Right.
right? And then the bodies can come together to share those values and share that mind and share that thoughts.
Yeah. There's one mind, and that we share with God.
Yeah.
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 I want to live from that more and more.
And we are. I mean, this.
We're working on it. You know, I haven't walked on water yet. You know what I'm saying? It's like.
But you know how to buy a boat. So, you know, we use this this lesson. There's nothing my holiness cannot do.
Yeah.
We use that frequently.
Yeah.
In our lives, you and I. I mean,
Yeah.
when we come up to a situation that seems really hard.
Yeah. You know, what's cool about it is the ego wants us to say, what? You're not holy? It's only the ego that's not holy. Your being is holy. You are the extension of the mind of God, and that is what's holy, and that is what we are.
That's right.
Yeah.
Before we go, and since we're this is the last set and we're going to move on, I want to make sure we articulate what this introduction to this review was trying to say to us. So it's saying that do your practice when you're alone, when you have favorable circumstances, when you can let all of those interferences be set aside and you're there with yourself. And so there's no interference from anything else. But it said the reason for that, and let me read that, is this is emphasized for the practice periods at our stage of learning. It will be necessary, however, that you learn to require no special settings in which to apply what you've learned.
Right.
You will need your learning most in situations that appear to be upsetting rather than those that already seem to be calm and quiet. The purpose of your learning is to enable you to bring quiet with you and to heal distress and turmoil. This is not done by avoiding them and seeking a haven of isolation for yourself. I just want to read the last of it. You will yet learn that peace is part of you and requires only that you're there to embrace any situation in which you are. And here's the kicker. And finally, you will learn that there is no limit to where you are, so that your peace is everywhere as you are. So this is.
We're not bodies.
No, that's ourself. So that ability to bring that peace forward and heal turmoil and chaos in the world, not just us.
Yeah, but through us.
But through us, and it's for everyone.
Yeah. Yep.